Hi there, Randi Green here. How to survive the future. Log 1, day 2. Today I'm contemplating upon those of us who are here in this reality field with a mission statement. And I know I haven't touched ground with that here publicly other than in the mission statement podcast I did with Josh. And it has come in and out of my life several times throughout the years since I began my activation process in 2000 and more or less around 5, but it actually already began in 1992. So it's this on and off where we activate, where we get in contact with our mission statement, and then we get thrown into other timelines where we technically don't belong. And there we are neuroengineered to believe that we are still following a mission statement, just to discover 1 year later or months down the line that we were operating on a different timeline and all that we have created technically distortion. So why is that? Why does our mission statement come in carambolage, as we say it in Danish? How does it clash with the current human form that we're in? And there's a lot of deep explanations there that I'm not going to go into here, as in kind of how did we get in? Did we get in on legit access points, or did we get in by trade, or did we get in by capturement in another system where we had a different type of mission statement in this quadrant? Because there have been many different, and I know in the old days we call rescue missions, but it's not. I don't adhere to rescue missions because you can't rescue anything in a system where everything is upon choices and free will, right? So you can't rescue anything. People are where they are due to their choices and the circumstances of the choices that they have made, which we in our reality call karma. But those of us who have a mission statement, it's this exploration of, okay, what is it? Well, technically and scientifically, I'm here talking higher order sciences, not human sciences. A mission statement is an engineered holographic interactive system that are inserted into a holographic architecture. So that means that it runs our energy system in specific ways to perform certain tasks. You could call it a program if you like, that are there to, sorry for being a little short breathed here, you just have to endure with that, but that's because my energy system is low as always when I get these insights, and they come with windows of opportunity, which of course the prevailing forces on this planet trying to keep it status quo are working against, hollow us out, and make sure that we don't get in contact with our mission statement. And that's where I want to go with this one, because with this talk, when I say with this one, I mean this podcast, we are having our mission statement. It's an inbuilt holographic interactive teaching system, as well as repair system, as well as recoding system, that allows our holographic energetic architecture to go into the different modalities that are necessary on the timelines we have targeted for our work, whatever that work means. And for me, work is transformation of energy and consciousness potentials into their original configuration of the original 12 universal lineages, which are now up to 16 universal lineages, which means that time has run inside this reality, and beyond that, the other civilizations that are part of this quadrant have done their elevation processes, and that's why we now have got new lineages. So with that one, we also understand that those of us who are here, we're stuck in the past. And to be able to access the future, we need to let go of the past, and that means clearing off our timelines and the anchor points that ties us to specific access and nodal points. A nodal point is where you have, an access point is where you enter into a reality field via the holographic architecture. It could be a stargate. That's the typical access point. Then when you have accessed that access point, you can then reconfigure yourself into the domain or the realm you want to participate in. And there's been different types of architectural ideas of what that means. What it means is there are different forms of realities that holds different forms of holographic energetic architecture, that holds different types of configurations that are expanded and expressed into different forms of reality, programs, settings, constructions, architectural reality field configurations that allows us to unfold certain dynamics of consciousness, developing and progressing our higher order energy system into its highest progression rate. Then we have the opposition that are kind of course, going the other direction, what they perceive to be for the highest good of their civilizations, whatever that means. And that is where we differ. We have different approaches to what the highest progression rate is. For those who choose to go to the service to self, we will call that the highest regression rate that goes down the hill, descending, whereas the ones that are under the progression dynamics are trying to elevate into the newer realms of existence that are working between what was and what is and what will come as we understand as the past, present, and future. Those of us who are born with a mission statement, however we entered into this reality field, I know I came in through an old gate in the old version of the Andromeda system, meaning that I technically traveled to an outdated and outworn nodal point, using an access point into this reality that were positioned in the past to be able to access into this level of reality around 1959. There are conflicting information about how I came in and why I came in, and that's been part of my journey to figure that one out. But each time I get close to anything, it's beyond my words. My human network, neural network hasn't got the language for it. I can see it as symbols. I know it as impressions. I know what I want to do and what I need to do. I just don't know what it is until it presents itself. So that's kind of a configuration to... There are two levels of it. First and foremost, of course, it is to preserve the initial holographic architecture so it doesn't get worn out and drained and reveal what the content is. The other part of that one is that the transformational processes that should have been able to incorporate the neural network configuration to adapt and integrate the mission statement has been intercepted. That's the best way I will put it. And it's clear to me that being put in a human form that's not really mine is one way of intercepting it, instead of one of the original operating vessels that I knew I was supposed to enter into in England. So that's part of, and instead I was born in this body here in Denmark, which has been part of my activation and clearing work and adaptation work and modification work to be able to function inside this body. But it also means that my neural network is not in alignment with my mission statement, which makes it easy to target and makes it easy to throw off. One thing I want to put in here that is important as well is that even though that we might not be in contact with a mission statement and it doesn't click into a neural network and begins the reconfiguration of our neurological structure so that we can integrate what we need to do to be able to exemplify it inside this reality as part of the reconfiguration of the outskirts of this quadrant, which we call the outer domain, density 1 outer domain, is that what we have left is the determination. And that's one of the things I'm kind of thinking about today, aside from all the other levels of information I've here given you, is that this determination of, I know what I need to do, I just don't know what it is. And that means that other people that are trying to be helpful and come our way and help us in what we need to do, they often experience that we say thank you, but that's not where I need to go. And that can be very frustrating for the people that are just being kind and want to help and assist. I remember my father, years ago, he told me regarding my childhood, he said, well, Randi, you were always so self-driven. And I kind of knew that my good ideas would not have helped. Similarly, when I went to Israel, when I said to people when I came back home, why didn't you stop me? Because, as they said, well, Randi, you are very determined and you go your own ways and you know what you need to do, but you don't like us telling you what to do. And that is absolutely a fact, which I have experienced over again inside the base program, which pushed me, of course, into the situation where I had to make a choice of could I remain or should I do something else. And it took many years to get to that understanding that I needed to do something else that was different from what was typical for my generation. Today I can see there's a lot of youngsters, very young, determined kids of the new bunch. They are already running businesses as 13-year-olds, and they are taking their whole family as their co-workers, and because they're so determined, this is what needs to be done, and the rest of the family just becomes part of the tribe, where the 13-year-old then becomes the leader of that new type of business or whatever needs to be done. But the question is, are they being pushed into the correct? Is that how their mission statement is supposed to be utilized? And my best understanding of that is no. So what would as I, again and again, when I talk to younger people, the ones in their 30s and the one in their 20s, the one in their 20s, they're a new bunch. They are not within my jurisdictional capacity, so to speak. Their configuration is completely different than mine. So it is in the 30s and the 40s, and many of you that came in as part of this age group, you ended up in the military projects where you were thrown into artificial timelines, thinking you were doing what you were supposed to do, just to discover along the line that whatever you thought you were doing is not what you were actually doing. So and I'm being very vague here, because I'm not going to tell people, oh, this is how you feel and this is how you see it, because I can't really say that that's the case. That's on an individual conversation I have in one of my coaching sessions, where I will know, oh, this is what you're kind of, where you come from. Not that I can say, oh, this or that system, because I typically get it in light code, and by that we don't have any language for that yet. But then I've been struck with, when I talk to youngsters, and you in your 30s and 40s, you are youngsters. I'm in my 50s, but I've been around a little bit longer than many of you that have come in. You were fresh in terms of cycles and in terms of what you need to do here, deliberately made so, because this system is wearing out with the old configurations, and by that, those of us who came in here, including myself, either we re-engineered ourselves to be able to modify into the new configurations, or you already had the new configurations when you came in. So you have this determination, and because it's not being played out as opposed to on the timelines you were supposed to access, and by that create a nodal point from where you could operate inside the holographic energetic network, instead of having that enormously determined push, you are then being put into everyday lives where you're playing the base program. And by that creates an enormous amount of distortion, because your mission statement is not about the base program. It's about changing the base program. It's not about aligning to the base program. It's about changing it. And we are supposed to be change makers and forerunners and make a difference. And since we're not allowed to do that, because there are still forces that want the status quo and push us into timelines where we are then pushing energy that's not ours to push, we don't have the configuration for it, then we wear out and we get tired and we get depressed and we feel that we're not really living up to our potentials, and we don't understand why. Because we think, oh, we're supposed to be like everybody else in this reality, but the matter of the fact is we're supposed to be change makers and forerunners. We're determined to be change makers and forerunners. And that's some of the things that we need to contemplate upon. Okay, how do we do then? How do we do that when we don't really know what we're supposed to do? And going back to what I do know that I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to educate and assist the ones that do have a mission statement, getting it as in kind of we had this great plan. Some would be the educators, some would be the mentors, some would be the change makers. We would go into different niches within this reality, understanding all the levels of reality first, and then target different sections where we would go in and become the change makers, transforming energy, transforming paradigms, transforming thought processes, and transforming reality as it actually is, so it could upgrade and get back in alignment with the original worlds outside the enclosure and the frequency fence. So much more can be said. I'll just sit this one in here on day 2 for you to contemplate upon and think a little bit. The weather modification podcast talks about the processes that we are to do to process scientific information. And remember, in the transition science courses 1 to 7, I talk about how we can process holographic energetic energies. So, and I know holographic energetic energies is a kind of pleonasm, but how can we rebuild our neural structure, the neural network, so that we are not only neurodivergent, but actually also becomes neuroinsurgent, as I would like to call those of us who are pioneers and change makers, because we are not normal neurological structure, neuronormal, that we fit in the base program. But we are not neurodivergent either, as we know from the different ADHD and ADD and Asperger and other similar neurodivergent structures, whatever that means, have a different type of neurological structure that is compared or relative to normality is divergent. But we are neuroinsurgent. We are here to see something completely new. We're not just different. We're something new. And this is where I created the whole academy and then got sucked into the fourth cycle and did all the classes that were needed to transition out of the fourth cycle and into the fifth. Those of us who are here now, we are to seed the fifth cycle. It's not about new earth and going into the fifth dimension. It's about learning to be human in a new way. Completely new way. And that's what the whole academy is about. That's why I keep trying to push. And whenever I push, I get pushed into another timeline. So point being here is still we are in processes. It's not about finding solutions. It's about beginning our mission statement. How do we get back to our mission statement? How do we begin the processes that get us back on track? How do we learn to administer the timelines so that we don't get pushed into timelines where we don't belong? How do we learn to emotionally and mentally restructure ourselves, do the reconfiguration so we can work in the outer domain with the fifth cycle type of consciousness that can go into the fifth dimension, but also can work in the fourth and in the third and in the 10th and in the 12th and whatever type of dimension. That means working with different forms of energy. So these are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And I know many of you are still relying on the information that's been given out there. But since we can now say that that material has not really come into fruition as it was supposed to. It was there and then it had its surge and then it kind of fizzled out. So that means that either it was shut down or it was simply not made for the majority of those of us who are here, because there are many different groups here. It's not just from one faction. It's not just from one position of future Earth or past Earth or whatever type of Earth that's here. We are also here from other systems and from other reality fields and from other sections and sectors of this quadrant that we are part of. And these are some of the things that we must expand into, understand that there are so many different ways of what it means to be a higher order being, existence, being in existence in whatever realm that we used to be part of, whatever that means and whatever the understandings are of that. So there's so much that needs to be recalibrated, thought through one more time, not just general sciences and base program ideas, but also within the spiritual community, also within what we call the UFO community, also within whatever community we can come up with. We have pushed it so far. My progression science is about the fourth cycle. The next level is ready to be implemented, but we need people to get there. We need people to uproot what they know, be ready to move into new areas of expertise and new areas of self-perception, move beyond the classical exploration systems that goes with expanded awareness and push ourselves into becoming change makers with whatever we touch, transforming all energy to its highest potentials. And with that also understanding, as those of you who are close to me and have been with me and know me from my classes, that's not an easy task. That's a lot of ups and downs and merry-go-rounds. And it's definitely not something that's been granted to us easily. It's not something that we get handed over. It's uphill. It's through resistance all the time. It's like trying to push a huge planet uphill like Sisyphus and constantly see it being pushed down where we will have to get back up, push it back up. So it's Sisyphus work. This is not about getting things done and become a success. This is those of us who choose to come in on the mission statements. We were a special bunch that knew how to transform energy, because we knew this was not going to be easy. And that easiness that we prefer as human beings, the comfort zone, and the constant challenges we have in this world, including having to pay our bills and get food on the table, is not something that we're accustomed to from where we come from. So that also demands a completely different type of psychological structure that we were not prepared for. We did not know that this was the Wild West. We did not know that they didn't follow the rules of engagement. We did not know that they would not be happy about seeing us. We went into a system that had a huge overlay, that had a kind of a shimmer around it that gave us false information. We were fed with false information from the councils. So we made mission statements that were inaccurate. And we got into nodal points that were already targeted before we even entered. As in, when we entered, there was someone else at the other end that received us that did not have our interest at heart. I have plenty of memories of that. Literally going in, and then instead of being met by our receiving group, we were met by a receiving party that were not friendly. So this is also some of the things, and by that, snatch the energy system and put it into a vessel where it didn't belong. So these are also some of the things that we need to process and work with. So in terms of when we talk about the work that we're here to do, we have barely begun it. And that's one of my big frustrations, as in kind of how do I keep pushing? And whenever I keep pushing, it feels like I'm exactly as a forerunner rightfully do, push it all alone. But at some point, others need to follow too. And there has been many voices on the mission statements, and there are many voices that will come, because we are getting closer to the fifth cycle configuration dynamics that are part of this original density 1 outer domain configuration, as the old colonizing factions and their technology begins to crumble and cease to constantly pump in artificial fourth energies and distortion energies, keeping this planet in its status quo, including the solar system in status quo, which again has dynamics that we will also learn to understand how the expansion actually works in alignment with consciousness potentials. But that's a whole other thing, meaning that we see reality as it is right now because we are configured into seeing it that way. The moment we as a collective begin to see it differently, it will change. Anyway, so thought processes on day 2 on how to survive the future for those of us who are on a mission statement and technically are here to build the bridge to the future. So people, those of you who are listening to this one, think into yourself, what are you, 4th cycle, 5th cycle? Are you part of the old world order reconfiguration programs, or are you under the enslavement programs? Are you here on a mission statement? Who are you? What are you? That's the first process. We need to know what we are so we can begin to work with the timelines where we truly belong, and by that unfold our true potentials. Thank you.